Today we're going to talk about using fusible interfacing in Appliqué. I use fusible interfacing a lot of times in certain ways to Appliqué. And for our block, our March block, where we're going to make a pot of gold, I used the fusible interfacing for that one. And I wanted to show you how to do it today. By the way, I also use the same method when I do the leaves for the flower hug quilts. I make the leaves and then I apply fusible interfacing and I put it on the leaves and then I fuse them down and then I stitch around them onto the quilt. So let's look at what we do, or how we do this. First of all, you have to use a pencil and trace the pattern that's in the pattern. So I'm going to trace the pot and I'm going to trace the gold. I'm tracing on this, the interfacing that I'm using is the one that I like. It's called Pellin, made by Pellin. It's called Pellin Sheer Tailor 950F. There's the pot. And then we need a little piece for the gold. And I'm going to put this dotted line here, but when I cut it out, I'm going to cut this a little bit bigger because he's going to sit inside the pot. Okay, now we're going to cut out the pot and the gold, and I'm going to cut it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I've done this enough, I don't usually draw in my seam allowance, but you can if you want to. I mean, you could use a ruler and add a 1/4 inch. Mainly, you want that sewing line. There's the pot, and here's the gold. Okay, then we're going to lay, this is my pot fabric. We're going to lay the fusible interfacing so that the side that's the fusible side, which I can tell is a little stickier, I am going to lay it down on my pot fabric on the right side. So I went sticky next to the right side, and I'm going to pin it down. I'm going to be sewing on those lines, so I don't need too many pins. This is my gold fabric. I can't tell the right side from the wrong side. Once again, I'm going to pin it so that the part that has a fusible on, the rough part, I'm going to lay that down onto the right side. Okay, now I'm at my sewing machine and I am going to sew around the lines that I have drawn, the outer lines. I'm sewing with this time about a 2.0 stitch length, regular stitch. I'm going to hold my threads, but you don't need to actually pull them up. Start with where you started, and then you're going to pull it out and do some trimming. I'm going to sew the gold one in the same way, but on the gold one, I'm not going to sew along the bottom edge. Only going to sew around the curve. Okay, now we have sewn all around the outside, the drawn line, and now I am going to trim. Now pull the pieces apart, and on the interfacing side, make a snip. This takes a little manipulating, but it's not that hard. Take your time. I have a little tool that looks like this. It's sort of a soft stiletto, but you can use your fingers too. Mainly we want those corners of the pot to come out. We're going to do the same thing with the gold. Okay, I have my pot and I have my gold fabric, and I'm ready to give it a little press before I put it on my fabric background. So I'm using some parchment paper. You can use a applique pressing sheet, and I just lay them down and I use a dry iron, and I'm just going to give them a little press on this side just to make sure that they're going to fit better when I'm ready to put them onto my background. Okay, I have a piece of background fabric. This is just muslin, and it's at least 4.5 inches big, but I like to have them a little bit bigger. It's easier to go big and then trim down. And I'm going to lay my pot down about in the middle. Okay, I'm going to stick the gold underneath the pot so that he's covered. And I have enough at the bottom, I have enough at the top. I could even stick that gold a little farther down in there. I want him straight. Now I'm going to follow the directions. I usually, for this type of interfacing, I use a lot of steam and a very hot iron. So we're going to do that. Now I'm just going to press it flat to the background. All right, I mentioned that you could just sew this with a straight stitch, and you can, but I decided I would rather use my favorite, the blanket stitch. So I have my machine all set up. I'm holding my threads. I'm going to go with a simple blanket stitch, and it can be a wide one because the edges are turned down. We just want to hold them to the background. Okay, I've already sewn the gold, and now I'm sewing the pot. I'm using the same blanket stitch. I did change thread, so that now I'm using a blue thread. And I'm going to go just around the edge. This time I'm going to go across the top edge too. gently thread that with an easy threader needle and tie it off, and we're almost done. Okay, I've sewn around both pieces with the thread, and what you can also do, and what I did on my one sample, was while it's not sewn into the block, you can use some gold thread and make little circles in there to be gold, or just leave it. I did, once I got it all sewn, I used my ruler and I trimmed it to an exact 4.5-inch square so that it can be sewn into the March house if you like. All done though.